Well, greetings, Pastor Eric here from Zion Lutheran Church in beautiful Redmond. It is day 14, December 14th. We're on Luke chapter 14, and one of the interesting things about Luke that is specific to Luke is that Jesus eats more with the Pharisees and with others at banquets than any of the other Gospels. Banquets at a time of Jesus were not just eating. Banquets were a time where you invited your friends, and really the specific purpose of a banquet or a meal at your house was for social posturing. You wanted to make sure that you invited all the cool kids in town, and you kind of wanted to show off not only your friends, but you wanted to kind of show off the kind of food that you gave to people. Because back then, they didn't have air conditionings, and so they kept the windows open so people on the streets could kind of walk on by and look on in and see, oh, so-and-so, would look at them. And people, the poor people of the town, would watch the rich people eating. And meals were a way of posturing the important people next to the host of honor. And that's why Jesus says the last will be first and the first last. And banquets gave Jesus the opportunity to turn the tables upside down. Remember Mary's Magnificat, high and mighty from their thrones and lift up the lowly. And Jesus uses banquets in the Gospel of Luke to do that very thing. So here is Luke chapter 14. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. They hadn't watched him closely so much now, but he started to poke them a little bit. Remember, you hypocrites. Remember that whole emphasis. Just then, in front of him, there was a man who had dropsy. In front of him, maybe not at the banquet, but sitting outside looking in. And Jesus asked the lawyers and the Pharisee, is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not? But they were silent. So Jesus took him and healed him and sent him away. Then he said to them, if one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on a Sabbath day? And they couldn't reply to this. So they were replying before, but all of a sudden they get very quiet. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you're invited to someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who has invited both of you may come to you and say, give this person your place. And then in disgrace, you would have to start to take the lowest place. But when you're invited, go and sit down at the lowest place so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He also said to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, don't invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Then you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. One of the dinner guests, on hearing this, said to him, blessed is anyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then Jesus said to him, someone gave a great banquet dinner and invited many. At the time for the dinner, he sent a slave to say to those who had been invited, come, for everything is ready now. But they will alike begin to make excuses. The first said to him, I bought a piece of land and I must go out and see it, Please accept my regrets. Another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen. I have to go try them out. Please accept my regrets. Another said, I have just been married and therefore I cannot come. So the slave returned and reported this to the master. Then the owner of the house became angry and said to his slaves, remember the song, I cannot come to the banquet, don't bother me now. I won't sing anymore. Go, the master said, out at once into the streets and lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame. And the slave said, Sir, what you've ordered has been done and there is still room. Then the master said to the slaves, Go out into the roads and lanes and compel people to come in so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who were invited will taste my dinner. Now, large crowds were traveling with him. And he turned and said to them, Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, This fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going out to wage a war against another king, will not sit down first and consider whether he's able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then, while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. So therefore, none of you can become my disciples if you do not give up all of your possessions. He wants to really make sure that discipleship is utmost in a person's life. The time is getting short. Remember Luke 9:51, setting his face to go to Jerusalem. The time is getting short and important. Salt is good, Jesus says, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltness be restored? It is neither fit for the soil nor for manure pile. They throw it away. Let anyone with ears listen. Jesus wants his disciples and us to take discipleship and following him very seriously. I have enjoyed reading Luke with you, and it's interesting to see how all of these stories of Jesus that we know so well, how they all tie together sequentially. We're just finishing up now, chapter 14, 9 more chapters, 10 more chapters until Luke 24. I'm going to read a popular Christmas prayer from Pope John Paul XIII, who died in 1963. He writes these words. O sweet child of Bethlehem, grant that we may